Hello and welcome back to the channel. A friend gave me her original Game Boy she recently found in storage to see if I could fix it up and make it playable again. It's in rough shape, but let's clean it up, fix it, and I'll show you a few easy mods that'll make it run like new again. Let's get into it. This unit was found in storage, and even though it's in pretty rough shape, it does still function and play games pretty well. As you can see, the LCD isn't displaying properly and is missing pixels on each side of the screen. This is a common problem for these units, but it is fixable. It's also pretty dirty and needs to be cleaned. The battery terminals are still working, but have a bit of corrosion on them from previous batteries being left in the unit and leaking though. The front screen protector has also fallen off, and there's now a bunch of old adhesive residue around the screen that needs some attention. We won't be needing this screen protector, so I'll toss that and get into the first task of this repair and refurbishment, which is cleaning the game pin connector. The goal is to play games with your system, so why not start there instead of repairing anything cosmetic. I have an old Game Boy cleaning kit that actually works really well for cleaning the connector pins. It's called the Eliminator by Naki. You can find these online, but Naki made a whole line of cleaning cartridges for use with older systems, and personally I think they work really well. They always come with some Naki brand cleaning solution too, which is basically just isopropyl alcohol, and that is the perfect solution to use for cleaning electronics. Wet the pad inside the cartridge with some IPA and vigorously pop the cartridge in and out to have it rub against the connector pins. The pads will collect most dirt and debris inside the console. You just need to wipe the pad with a Q-tip to keep it clean. Keep doing this until the pad starts to come away with only a minor amount of dirt, and the connector should be working more consistently when you're done. Since this unit is still working, I'm going to disassemble it from the housing and get it soaking so it's easier to clean later. Then I can work on cleaning up the inside while I'm waiting for the outside to soak. After removing the outer screws, do not just pull the handheld apart, as this may damage the ribbon cable that attaches the front screen to the back circuit board. Open it carefully and remove the ribbon from the board so it doesn't damage it. This is very difficult to replace or repair if damaged, so you'll want to be careful with it. The inside is actually pretty clean, which is a really good sign. I was hoping that the corrosion on the battery terminals didn't continue to the inside, and it looks like it didn't. This makes the cleaning process a lot easier. Removing the front circuit board from its housing can be a little tricky though. There's a double-sided tape frame around the edges of the screen to keep it in place and prevent any dust from getting in. This can sometimes be a little sticky and hard to remove. If it is and you don't have a front protector, just gently push on the screen from the front and it should pop right out. If you have a protector in place, you should be able to wiggle the board from side to side, and that'll eventually release it from the tape too. I'm going to remove this tape frame and save it for later. I'm also going to remove this sticker from the battery door since it's in pretty rough shape too. I don't have a replacement for it, but you can purchase new stickers that look exactly like these originals if you'd like online. Let's get all these parts soaking so when I come back I can give the case a deep cleaning. Get some hot water going and use a degreaser like Dawn dish soap to get all the case parts nice and soapy. Let them marinate in the water for a while to break up the dirt, and while we wait for those to get clean, let's finish up cleaning the electronics. I'm just going to go over the whole board with some IPA to clean out any dust and check for anything else that might need to be fixed before adding any mods. Pro tip though, be gentle while cleaning the speaker since the top plastic part can pop off and break. For the on-off switch, you can drip some IPA into its housing and move the switch back and forth to clean any of the contacts inside. This will clean it, but if you're having problems with it not turning on or off, it may need to be taken apart completely for a deeper clean. Next, let's clean up the corrosion on the battery terminals. Remember those experiments in kindergarten where you put baking soda inside of a volcano and added vinegar to make it erupt? Yeah, we're doing that, but just on a much smaller scale. Get a small dish and add your corrosion-filled parts and some baking soda. Then make sure your dish is in the sink and add some vinegar slowly until the entire dish is full of little cleaning bubbles. This combination eats the corrosion away and will leave your terminals looking very clean once it's done reacting. Leave the parts in the solution until they stop bubbling. Rinse them with some clean tap water and leave them out to dry. Now that these parts are all clean, let's jump back to the housing and the buttons that are soaking to get those finished up. You don't need to leave your parts soak if you don't want to, but it does speed up the cleaning time, as you can see here. Just look at how little effort it took to clean up the back side of this case. Take your time and clean up the rest of the parts with a soft toothbrush and they will be shining in no time at all. Just be careful of the button pads and don't scrub too hard. These can tear and be ruined if you apply too much pressure. Once you're happy with how everything looks, rinse them all with some clean water and leave them out to dry. These are the only new parts that we will be adding. A brand new glass screen protector that looks exactly like the original version, but a much better quality. A simple backlight kit so you can now see the screen in low light. And a Bivert mod that will invert the colors of the LCD and provide an even better viewing quality with an increased amount of contrast that the backlight alone cannot provide. After you are done, the screen will be a bluish color instead of the standard green, but the images will be much clearer and less washed out. Before we get into installing those, I just want to finish up cleaning the housing and get it all set up for reassembly. The front face still has some leftover adhesive even after the initial cleaning with the soap and water. I'm using a small screwdriver to remove the hardened parts left over and cleaning up the dust left behind with some IPA. This area isn't seen when the screen protector is added back in, so if this is a little scratched after cleaning, that's okay. I like to do one more final wipe down of the outsides just to remove any water spots from drying as well. I've also found that the button pads need additional cleaning on occasion, so I've just made it a habit to also go over these a second time after cleaning too. The little black conductive pads on the bottoms of these can wear out and not react as well when pressed even after cleaning. I like to go back and try to remove the bottommost layer of the pads with some IPA and a Q-tip, and then rub them on a paper towel until they start to come away clean. It's another simple cleaning hack that will help keep your handheld functioning for a while longer without the need for any replacements. Now that every part is clean, let's start adding in the mods. The Bivert Mod is a wonderfully designed small drop-in board that gets soldered in place on the rear circuit board of the Game Boy. The 6th and 7th pins of the display connector need to be removed and bent upwards so they can be attached to this little add-on. Any extra height on the legs for these solder spots here needs to be trimmed down so that this can be soldered in place though. Once these pins are removed from the main board with some desoldering ribbon, carefully bend them up with something sharp and they should pop off the board easily. If you're having some troubles, go back in and reheat them with the desoldering braid to remove any excess solder from the pins and try again. Once these are bent, the new board can be dropped in and soldered down. The little holes on the board are the exact points that need to be filled with solder so that it connects to the main board underneath. Make sure to heat up the joints evenly as possible so the solder reaches to the bottom and attaches itself to the main board though. You can check to see if each point is attached by looking at the side of the board. Once these little holes are filled, you can move on to adding the ground wire in place by soldering it to this spot on the main board. And you're finished. Just test it out to make sure the board is working. It's working well, but the screen still looks a little messed up. Let's fix that next. Remove the front rubber part on the bottom of the screen to get access to the bottom ribbon cable parts. Then take your soldering iron and carefully heat up the ribbon while it is turned on to see which pixels are missing. Heat up roughly where the pixels are missing on the ribbon and remove the iron every few seconds to let it cool to see if it needs more heat. You're basically heating the connections to reflow the solder underneath the ribbon cables, and once these connections are made again, it displays the proper pixels in that area. Do this until your full screen is back and looks like this. You can see how it looks with the game running now too. Much clearer picture, even though it is very dark, but we'll fix that next. I removed the rest of the adhesive on the bottom of the ribbon cable and will super glue that rubber part back in place once we are done with the backlight install. Remove the 2 screws holding the LCD ribbon in place and pull it away from the housing. The back side of the LCD has a reflective material that needs to be removed in order to have the backlight work correctly. Take a hobby knife and slip it along the edge to cut the back layers off the LCD. Be very careful in these steps since cutting the cable or removing the screen from the board will damage it. But once you have enough of the back material removed, you can start to pull it off with your fingers, but it is a very tough process, so if you don't have a lot of hand strength, it may be better to continue cutting with your knife. Once it is removed, give the whole screen a good cleaning to remove any fingerprints and adhesive. Then place the backlight behind the LCD to see where the ribbon cable sticks out of the white plastic housing. This part needs to be trimmed so the wires don't have any additional pressure on them. Cut a small chunk away with some flush trim cutters and solder the wires in place to your backlight kit. This should fit seamlessly inside the back of the LCD, and the additional wires get soldered into the front of the board at these locations. The excess wire can be pulled through a hole in the middle of the board, and I use some Kapton tape to hold them in place on the back. Then carefully add in the polarizer included with the kit. Make sure it's in the proper direction without touching the front to prevent any fingerprints, and reinstall the screws holding everything in place to test it out. Once reassembled and tested for function, you should be good to go for the final assembly. Now the picture quality should look nice and crisp like this. Remember that sticky part I removed early on? Well, we're going to be adding it back to hold the screen in place. Just move it around until you get it in the right location and it doesn't overhang the front housing or cover up the LCD screen at all. Then clean the LCD one more time before install to remove any extra dust and then add back all the screws to button up the handheld. Before placing the new glass screen protector down, I like to use a little canned air to make sure it is 100% clean. It's probably overkill, but it's really annoying having a speck of dust on the screen after all your hard work putting everything back together properly. The only way to get it out is to take everything apart again, and that's just not a fun process. Press firmly on the edges of your new protector and satisfyingly peel the front plastic off to reveal your brand new looking handheld. The picture quality is great and really looks way more crisp compared to the original. I'm super happy how this unit turned out, and I know our friend will love it too. I hope you were able to learn something today, and if you enjoyed, I would really appreciate your subscription. Thank you all for your support, and we'll see you next fix.